The sun has not yet risen over the hills of Jerusalem. The city sleeps beneath a mantle of stars, its limestone walls glowing faintly under the pale light of a crescent moon. But inside the Western Palace, the largest and most magnificent private residence in the entire Roman East, one man is already awake. You are Herod. Herod the Great, king of Judea, Samaria, Galilee, and every stretch of land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Rome calls you a friend. Your subjects call you a tyrant. History will call you both, and neither name will capture what it truly means to sit upon this throne. You lie on a couch draped in Tyrian purple, inside a bedchamber decorated with frescoes imported from Italy, pastoral scenes of rivers and vineyards painted by artists on loan from Emperor Augustus himself. The floors beneath you are covered in intricate mosaics, geometric patterns in black and white stone, cool against the skin. Bronze oil lamps flicker along the walls, casting dancing shadows across the ceiling. But there is no peace in this room. There has not been peace for years. Your mind races before your body stirs. You think of Rome, you think of your sons, you think of the priests who despise you, the Pharisees who mock your bloodline, and the common people who whisper that you are not truly one of them. Because you are not. Not entirely. Your father, Antipater, was an Idumean, a descendant of Esau, not Jacob. The Idumeans were forced to convert to Judaism only a generation before your birth. Your mother, Cyprus, was a Nabatean princess from Petra. You are an Arab on both sides of your family tree, sitting on the throne of David. And no amount of temple building, no mountain of gold poured into the holy city will ever make the purists forget it. This is your kingdom. This is your burden. And today, for 24 hours, you will carry it. The first sound you hear is the measured footsteps of your Germanic bodyguards outside the chamber door. These towering warriors from the forest beyond the Rhine are modeled after Augustus's own personal guard, the Germani Corporis Custodes. They answer to no one in Judea but you. They do not speak Hebrew. They do not speak Aramaic. They barely speak Greek. And that is precisely why you trust them. A guard who cannot gossip with your courtiers is a guard who cannot be bribed with words. Beside the Germanic unit stands a rotation of Thracian soldiers, battle-hardened men whose ancestors served in Jewish armies since the days of the Hasmonean dynasty. And there are Celts too, former bodyguards of Cleopatra herself, given to you as a gift by Augustus after the Battle of Actium. 2,000 soldiers in total form your personal guard. 2,000 men standing between you and the assassination you know is always being planned. You rise slowly. Your body aches. You are nearly 70 years old, though you tell no one your exact age. The illness that will eventually consume you has already begun its quiet work. A burning in the stomach, a heaviness in the limbs that no physician's remedy can cure. But the mind is still sharp. The mind is always sharp. A servant enters. A young man who will not meet your eyes. Good. You prefer it that way. He brings a basin of warm water scented with nard and myrrh. You wash your hands and face according to the Jewish purity laws you publicly observe. There are nearly 40 ritual baths, mikvehs, scattered throughout your palaces. Some scholars will later debate whether they are truly mikvehs or simply Roman-style cold water baths. The truth is, they are both. You are both. You have always been both. You dress in robes of fine linen, dyed in the deepest indigo. A golden clasp holds a cloak of Damascene wool across your shoulders. On your fingers, signet rings bearing your royal seal. On your head, no crown, not in the mornings. The crown is for audiences. The crown is for show. In private, you are simply a man trying to hold an empire together with his bare hands. As the first rays of sunlight pierce through the narrow windows of the palace corridor, you make your way to the council chamber. This is a vast hall with marble floors and walls lined with cedar of Lebanon, the same wood that once adorned Solomon's temple 1,000 years before you. 3 immense towers guard the northern perimeter of your palace complex. The Phasael Tower, named after your brother, who was murdered by the Parthians, the Hippicus Tower, named after a fallen friend, and the Mariamne Tower, named after the wife you loved more than anything in this world, and whom you ordered executed. You do not look at the Mariamne Tower this morning. You never look at it if you can help it. In the council chamber, your chief advisors are already assembled. Nicolaus of Damascus, your personal secretary, historian, and closest intellectual companion, stands near the window reviewing scrolls. Nicolaus is a Greek philosopher who once tutored the children of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He is brilliant, loyal, and most importantly, he understands the game of empires. He will one day write the official history of your reign, a history that Josephus the historian will draw upon decades later. Beside Nicolaus sits your head of security, a man whose name history has not preserved, but whose role is crucial. He commands the network of secret police that monitors every corner of your kingdom. Informants in the marketplaces, spies in the synagogues, agents embedded among the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes. No conversation of consequence happens in Judea without a report eventually reaching this table. The briefing begins. A dispatch has arrived from the Roman governor of Syria. Augustus is pleased with the tax revenues from Judea. You have always been meticulous about finances, understanding that Rome's friendship is purchased with gold and grain. But there is tension on the eastern border. The Parthian Empire stirs again, and Rome wants assurances that the frontier provinces are secure. You dictate a response through Nicolaus. The letter is diplomatic, effusive in its praise of Augustus, and carefully worded to remind Rome that no one in the region is more capable of maintaining order than Herod. You have been doing this for 30 years. You survived the fall of Mark Antony by prostrating yourself before Octavian, the man who would become Augustus. You told the new emperor that you would be as loyal to him as you had been to his rival. The audacity of it should have gotten you killed. Instead, it earned you the throne. After the briefing, you call for your litter, an ornate chair carried by 8 slaves, draped in embroidered curtains. You are going to the Temple Mount. The journey from the Western Palace to the temple is short but significant. You pass through the upper city, where the wealthiest families of Jerusalem reside in palatial homes with mosaic floors and private ritual baths. The streets here are clean, the limestone walls freshly plastered. But even in this privileged quarter, you can feel the eyes upon you. Curtains twitch, conversations pause. A mother pulls her child closer as the royal procession passes. You arrive at the Temple Mount, your greatest achievement, and the work that you hope will immortalize your name long after your bones have turned to dust. 20 years ago, you began the most ambitious building project in the history of the Jewish people, the complete rebuilding and expansion of the Second Temple. The platform alone has been doubled in size, creating a sacred precinct that dominates the entire city. The scale is staggering. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 500 tons, have been cut and fitted with such precision that no mortar is needed between them. The retaining walls rise 60 feet or more above the Kidron Valley. Inside the precinct, colonnades of towering columns, the royal stoa along the southern wall, create shaded walkways where merchants trade and scholars debate. The court of the Gentiles bustles with money changers and dove sellers. The scent of incense and animal sacrifice fills the air. You do not enter the inner courts. You cannot. Despite your title, despite your power, despite the fortune you have poured into this project, you are not permitted into the sacred precincts reserved for priests and observant Jews. The rabbinical authorities have made this clear. Your Idumean blood disqualifies you. You built the house of God, but you may never fully enter it. This fact burns like acid in your chest every single day. You inspect the construction from the outer courts, speaking with the chief architects and foremen. Over 10,000 workers are employed on the project. Stonemasons, carpenters, sculptors, and laborers. You even arranged for 1,000 priests to be trained in masonry, so that the holiest inner structures could be built by ritually pure hands. Nothing has been left to chance. Nothing has been left to criticism. And yet the criticism comes anyway. The Pharisees whispered that you built the temple not for God, but for yourself. That the golden eagle you placed above the main gate, a symbol of Rome, is an abomination. That the theater and hippodrome you built in Jerusalem are pagan corruptions. They are right about the eagle, of course. It is there to remind everyone who your patron is. But the temple itself, the temple is genuine. You may be many things, but your devotion to this building is real. You return to the palace for the most exhausting duty of kingship, hearing petitions. In the great audience hall, a room with vaulted ceilings, walls decorated with gold leaf, and a raised throne at the far end, you receive a parade of supplicants, complainants, ambassadors, and schemers. A delegation from Caesarea Maritima, the magnificent port city you built from nothing on the Mediterranean coast, brings news of trade disputes with Phoenician merchants. The harbor you engineered there, with its massive concrete breakwaters extending into the sea, has transformed the economy of the eastern Mediterranean. Ships from Egypt, Greece, and Rome now dock regularly, bringing goods and revenue. But with commerce comes conflict, and you must arbitrate. Next, a group of Sadducean priests request an audience regarding temple revenues. The Sadducees are your natural allies. They are the aristocratic priestly class who benefit from your patronage and who share your pragmatic approach to Roman rule. Unlike the Pharisees, who emphasized oral law and popular piety, the Sadducees focus on temple ritual and political stability. You grant their request and promise to review the accounts. Then comes a harder case. A man from the Galilee, a farmer whose land was seized by one of your tax collectors, has somehow made it past the guards to present his grievance. He kneels before you, trembling, barely able to speak. His story is common. Taxes demanded beyond what was owed, property confiscated, a family left destitute. You have heard this story 100 times. You order the tax collector investigated. Not because you care about one farmer's olive grove, but because unchecked corruption undermines the system. You learned this from Rome. An empire that allows its agents to steal too much will soon have nothing left to tax. The farmer is given a small purse of coins and sent away. He will tell his village that the king was merciful. This is how you build a reputation. One calculated act of generosity at a time. As the sun reaches its zenith and the heat of the Judean hills becomes oppressive, you retreat to the cooler interior chambers of the palace. The central gardens, with their porticos, canals, pools fitted with bronze fountains, and groves of imported trees, provide shade and relief. Tame pigeons coo from their dovecotes near the canals. The sound of water running through the gardens creates an illusion of paradise in the desert. Today there will be a banquet. There is almost always a banquet. Entertaining is not merely a pleasure for you. It is statecraft. The dining complex near the Temple Mount, with its 2 grand halls arranged in the Greco-Roman triclinium style, is where alliances are forged and rivals are assessed. The preparations are elaborate. Servants have been working since before dawn. The couches for reclining, the custom of wealthy diners, have been arranged along the walls of the main hall, draped in fine fabrics. The menu has been planned with surgical precision. The first course will feature appetizers drawn from the finest ingredients available in the Eastern Mediterranean. Chickens roasted with cumin and coriander, young pigeons stuffed with dates and pine nuts, partridges basted in honey and pomegranate sauce, and tender goat marinated in wine and herbs. Platters of olives, green and black, will be arranged alongside fresh bread baked in clay ovens, still warm and fragrant. The main course will center on roast lamb, the most prized dish in Jewish cuisine, seasoned with rosemary, thyme, and garlic, slow cooked over coals until the meat falls from the bone. Alongside it, dishes of lentils cooked with onions and cumin, salads of cucumber and mint dressed with olive oil, and grilled fish from the Sea of Galilee. Tilapia and sardines packed in salt, and brought overland by fast couriers. Wine will flow freely. Not the common wine of the Judean hills, but imported vintages from Italy, Greece, and Cyprus, stored in the palace's extensive cellars. The amphorae are sealed with pitch and labeled by year and origin. You appreciate good wine the way you appreciate good architecture, as evidence of civilization. For dessert, there will be fresh fruits, figs, dates, pomegranates, and apples, arranged decoratively on the table, alongside bowls of almonds and pistachios glazed with honey. Cakes made from ground chickpeas and sweetened with date syrup will be offered to those who wish them. You know that your banquets are legendary. At Masada, your desert fortress overlooking the Dead Sea, you once hosted feasts that lasted 10 hours, celebrations that rivaled anything in Rome. Here in Jerusalem, the standard is no less impressive, though the tone is more political than festive. Every seat at the table is a statement. Every conversation is a negotiation. After reviewing the banquet arrangements, you dedicate the afternoon to the work that brings you the closest thing to joy: your building projects. A messenger arrives with architectural drawings from Caesarea Maritima, where engineers are still refining the harbor infrastructure. The harbor is a marvel of Roman engineering, adapted to the Judean coast. Massive concrete forms were lowered into the sea to create breakwaters that protect the anchorage from Mediterranean storms. Warehouses, markets, a temple to Augustus, a theater, and a hippodrome have transformed what was once a crumbling Hellenistic outpost into one of the great port cities of the Roman world. But Caesarea is only one piece of the puzzle. You have built, or are building, palaces at Jericho, where the warm winter climate allows you to escape Jerusalem's cold season. The Jericho complex spans both banks of the Wadi Kelt Gorge, connected by a bridge, with sunken gardens, swimming pools, reception halls paved with mosaics, and walls covered in frescoes. You have the fortress of Masada, perched atop an impossible plateau above the Dead Sea, with its own ingenious water system fed by aqueducts and cisterns. You have Herodium, the cone-shaped artificial mountain south of Bethlehem that serves as both palace and intended burial site, covering 45 acres with a theater, pools, and gardens at its base. You study the drawings with the focus of a man who understands that buildings outlast dynasties. Solomon built one temple and is remembered forever. You have rebuilt that temple and constructed an entire kingdom of stone. Surely history will remember. Surely, as the afternoon heat begins to soften, you make your way to the bathhouse, a Roman-style complex within the palace grounds, complete with a caldarium for hot bathing, a tepidarium for warm relaxation, and a frigidarium for cold plunging. The system works the same way it does in Rome. Fires burn beneath raised floors, heating the water and the air, with channels in the walls distributing warmth evenly throughout the rooms. The caldarium is thick with steam scented with aromatic oils, frankincense and cedar wood perhaps, or spikenard and cinnamon. You recline on a marble bench while an attendant scrapes your skin with a bronze strigil, the curved instrument used throughout the Roman world to remove oil, sweat, and grime. The heat penetrates your aching joints, and for a moment, just a moment, the weight of the kingdom lifts. In the tepidarium, you lie on heated tiles beneath frescoes depicting scenes of the Italian countryside, vineyards, harbors, sunlit hills. These paintings were executed by artists who had traveled the Mediterranean, and their presence here in the Judean desert is a testament to your reach and your taste. You are a king who lives between two worlds, the Jewish kingdom you rule and the Roman civilization you admire. The baths are where those worlds intersect most comfortably. In the frigidarium, a large cold pool awaits. The plunge is shocking but invigorating. Water for the baths is channeled from springs and aqueducts. In Herodium, the water travels from pools near Hebron through miles of conduits. Here in Jerusalem, the palace's own cisterns and reservoirs, filled during the rainy season and supplemented by aqueduct, provide an abundant supply. You emerge from the baths refreshed, or at least less burdened. A fresh set of robes awaits. White linen for the evening, trimmed with gold thread. A servant offers you a mirror of polished bronze. You look at the reflection. The face that stares back is weathered, deeply lined. The face of a man who has survived civil wars, assassinations, betrayals, and the slow erosion of his own family. But the eyes are still fierce. The eyes still command. As twilight descends over Jerusalem and the Temple Mount glows golden in the fading light, the banquet hall comes alive. Oil lamps by the hundreds are lit, their warm glow reflecting off polished marble and gold-leafed walls. Incense burners release thin columns of fragrant smoke, frankincense and myrrh, the sense of wealth and worship mixed together. The guests arrive in order of importance. First, the senior members of the Sadducean priesthood, men whose families have held temple positions for generations. They wear fine robes and carry themselves with the quiet arrogance of inherited privilege. You need them to legitimize your religious authority, and they need you to protect their positions. It is a mutually beneficial arrangement, though neither side fully trusts the other. Next come the military commanders, officers of the various garrisons stationed throughout the kingdom. Roman-trained and battle-tested, they represent the hard edge of your power. Without the army, the kingdom would collapse within a month. Then the merchants and foreign dignitaries, representatives from Nabatea, your mother's homeland, from Egypt, where grain supplies are always a matter of concern, from the Greek cities of the Decapolis across the Jordan. Each brings gifts and each seeks favors. You take your place at the head of the triclinium, reclining on the most honored couch, propped on your left elbow in the Greek fashion. The arrangement of the dining room is deliberate. The placement of each guest sends a message about their status in your eyes. To recline near the king is to be favored. To be seated far from the king is to be warned. The meal unfolds in two parts, following the Greco-Roman tradition. The first part is devoted primarily to eating. Course after course arrives. The appetizers, the roasted meats, the fish, the breads, and salads. Servants move silently between the couches, refilling wine cups from painted ceramic pitchers. The second part, the symposium, from the Greek word for drinking party, is devoted to conversation, entertainment, and the real business of the evening. Musicians play lyres and flutes. A poet recites verses composed in your honor. Perhaps there is a theatrical performance. You built theaters in Jerusalem, Caesarea, and Jericho precisely for occasions like these, though the Pharisees condemn them as pagan spectacles. During the symposium, you observe your guests carefully. Who is speaking to whom? Who seems nervous? Who is drinking too much? Whose laughter seems forced? Your network of informants extends even into this room. The servant pouring wine may report to your intelligence chief. The musician in the corner may be listening for more than the rhythm of the song. A Sadducean elder approaches your couch to discuss a matter of temple finance. You listen, nod, promise consideration. A military officer reports on troop movements near the Nabatean border. You ask pointed questions about supply lines and morale. A merchant from Sidon offers a shipment of Lebanese cedar at a favorable price. You negotiate briefly, then delegate the details to Nicolaus. This is what kingship looks like. Not the crown and the scepter, but the endless, exhausting management of people and their desires. You must be judge, general, diplomat, accountant, and performer, all in the same evening. And through it all, you must project absolute confidence while trusting absolutely no one. The banquet ends. The guests depart in their litters, carried through the torch-lit streets of Jerusalem by slaves. The palace grows quiet. The servants clear the hall. The musicians pack their instruments. And now comes the hardest part of the day. You retire to your private chambers, and the silence closes in like a fist. This is when the ghosts come. Not literal ghosts, you are too practical for superstition, but the memories that haunt you more effectively than any phantom. Mariamne, your Hasmonean wife, the woman whose beauty was legendary throughout the ancient world. You loved her with a passion that bordered on madness, and that madness ultimately consumed you both. Convinced by your sister Salome that Mariamne was plotting against you. Perhaps she was. Perhaps she was not. You had her tried and executed. The moment the sentence was carried out, you broke. Josephus will later write that you wandered the palace calling her name, ordering servants to summon her as if she were still alive. Her mother, Alexandra, tried to seize power in the chaos that followed. You executed her too. Then there are your sons. Alexander and Aristobulus, the children you had with Mariamne, raised in Rome and educated in the finest traditions of the empire. They came home proud and entitled, making no secret of their contempt for their father's origins and their intention to avenge their mother. Or so you were told. Your eldest son, Antipater, the child of your first wife, fed you a constant stream of accusations against his half-brothers. You believed him. You had Alexander and Aristobulus arrested, tried, and strangled. Augustus himself is said to have remarked that it was better to be your pig than your son, a dark joke playing on the Greek words for pig and son, and the Jewish prohibition against eating pork. Your pigs, at least, were safe. But Antipater too was eventually exposed as a conspirator. Even now, as you lie in your chamber, Antipater sits in a prison cell beneath this very palace, condemned to death by your own order. You have outlived your enemies, your friends, your wives, and soon your sons. This is the price of the crown. Sleep does not come easily. It never does. You rise from the couch and walk to the window. Below, the city of Jerusalem spreads out in the moonlight. The city you have transformed from a provincial backwater into one of the great capitals of the ancient world. To the east, the Temple Mount dominates the skyline, its white limestone and gold trim catching even the faintest light. You rebuilt that temple not just as an act of piety, but as a statement that Herod's Jerusalem rivals Athens and Rome in grandeur. The Western Wall, the massive retaining wall that supports the expanded platform, will stand for millennia. You may not know this, but some part of you suspects it. To the south, beyond the city walls, lies Herodium, the artificial mountain where you have prepared your eternal resting place. You reshaped the very landscape to create a monument that could be seen from Jerusalem itself. The palace fortress at its summit, with its 4 towers rising 40 meters high, contains your private apartments, decorated with the finest mosaics and frescoes. The theater discovered at its base, with its luxurious royal box, hosted performances against the backdrop of the desert and the distant shimmer of Jerusalem. You think about death more often now. The illness is progressing. The physicians offer remedies, herbal baths at the hot springs near the Dead Sea, poultices, dietary changes. But nothing truly helps. You know that when you die, the kingdom will fracture. Your surviving sons will fight over the pieces, and Rome will step in to impose its own order. You have already changed your will multiple times, each revision reflecting the latest betrayal or alliance. Currently, the kingdom is to be divided among your remaining sons, Archelaus, Antipas, and Philip. But you know that Augustus will have the final word. Everything in your life has depended on Rome's approval, and your death will be no different. In the deepest hours of the night, when even the guards grow drowsy at their posts, you sit at a table covered with maps and documents. You are reviewing the state of the kingdom one more time, the way a general reviews the battlefield before dawn. The numbers are impressive. Under your rule, Judea has experienced unprecedented prosperity. You cut taxes during the Great Drought, imported grain from Egypt to feed the starving, and invested massively in infrastructure. The roads connecting Jerusalem to Jericho, Caesarea, and the Galilee are among the finest in the Roman East. Trade flows freely through the ports and overland routes you have secured. Your building projects have employed tens of thousands. Beyond the temple and the palaces, you have constructed aqueducts to bring water to Jerusalem, fortresses to secure the borders and entire cities. Caesarea Maritima, Sebaste, and Antipatris, that serve as engines of commerce and symbols of your vision. But the people do not love you. The Pharisees accuse you of Hellenizing the kingdom, of importing Roman culture at the expense of Jewish tradition. The common people resent the taxes that fund your projects, even when those projects benefit them directly. The priestly aristocracy tolerates you only because you guarantee their positions, and the old Hasmonean loyalists, those who remember the dynasty you replaced, will never forgive you for being an outsider on the throne. You have tried to bridge these divisions. You married a Hasmonean princess to claim legitimacy. You rebuilt the temple to demonstrate your devotion. You observed Jewish purity laws publicly. You avoided placing images on your coins, a concession to the commandment against graven images. But it was never enough. It will never be enough. You pick up a stylus and begin composing a letter to Augustus. The language is carefully chosen, reverential but confident, grateful but dignified. You report on the kingdom's stability, request continued support, and subtly remind the emperor that a strong Judea serves Roman interests in the region. Nicolaus will polish the draft in the morning, adding the philosophical flourishes that Augustus appreciates. The sky begins to lighten in the east, a thin line of gold appearing above the Mount of Olives. The Temple Mount catches the first rays of light, and for a moment the entire structure seems to glow from within. A city of gold rising from the stone of the earth. You have not slept, or perhaps you dozed briefly, fitfully, your mind churning even in rest. The Germanic guards outside your door have changed shifts twice during the night. The palace is stirring again, servants preparing fires, bakers starting the morning bread, stable hands tending the horses. You wash your face and hands once more. You put on fresh robes. You prepare to face another day exactly like this one, and the one before it, and the one before that. A day of audiences and inspections, of intelligence briefings and construction reviews, of banquets and negotiations, of letters to Rome and arguments with priests. You are Herod. You are 70 years old. You have killed your wife, your sons, your rivals, and countless others in the name of security. You have built temples and cities, harbors and fortresses. You have held together a kingdom that should have collapsed a dozen times over, balanced on the knife edge between Jewish tradition and Roman power. You are the most powerful man in the land of Israel, and you are utterly alone. The sun rises over Jerusalem. The new day begins, and the king, the builder, the tyrant, the survivor, walks once more into the light. Herod the Great would die approximately 4 years before the birth of the calendar that would eventually be used to mark time itself. His kingdom, as he feared, was divided among his sons and gradually absorbed into direct Roman administration. The temple he built with such obsessive care would stand for less than a century before being destroyed by Roman legions in 70 CE. Only the western wall, a retaining wall not even part of the temple proper, would survive, becoming the most sacred site in Judaism. His palace in Jerusalem would become the official residence of Roman governors, including, most famously, Pontius Pilate. His fortress at Masada would become the site of one of the most dramatic last stands in history. His tomb at Herodium would be discovered 2,000 years later by archaeologists, the sarcophagus broken and empty, destroyed, it is believed, by the same Jewish rebels who despised his memory. History would remember Herod as a builder of extraordinary vision and a ruler of extraordinary cruelty. A man who reshaped the landscape of an entire nation and destroyed his own family in the process. A king who was never fully accepted by his people, no matter how much he gave them. But for 24 hours you walked in his sandals. You sat on his throne. You felt the weight of his crown and the loneliness of his chamber. And perhaps, for just a moment, you understood what it meant to be the most powerful man in a world that would never truly call you its own. The sun sets over Jerusalem, the torches are lit, the guards take their positions, and somewhere in the palace, the king lies awake, listening, always listening, for the sound of footsteps in the dark.